What's up, guys? Welcome back to Games on Deck, and I'm a bit late with Flight Simulator 24, but this game's been a real pain, and then we had the holiday, and so we'll have a fix in here that's been making the game launch and work here on the Steam Deck, and we'll have a little bit of performance in here we can look at, and some of the settings, and that type of thing. So let's go ahead and get into it here and take a look at Flight Simulator 24 and how I have it running here on the Steam Deck. We're back working well here, and I want to show this fix, at least for now, that gets this to work. It could become irrelevant at any time with any kind of updates, but for now, this is what we've got. So prior to the fix, if you were to launch the game, at some point here, you're going to fail out or get this window pop up or crash, and you're not going to be able to get everything loaded into the game. I would typically get this window, the assertion failure, twice before going hard crash. I could hide the window, go back over, and the game would continue to load up to 49%, but then eventually go ahead and crash out. Now, getting into what the fix is here, this is going to be for Proton Experimental and a launch option command line you're going to need to use. So we're going to use Force Compatibility Layer, Proton Experimental, but also you're going to need to change Proton Experimental over to a beta version. So go into your library and search for Proton. You're going to want to come down here and find Proton Experimental, select that, and then go over to the gear icon for properties. Come down here to betas, and then you'll see the beta participation. Yours probably says none as default. You're going to want to go into this menu and select the bleeding edge, latest and untested XVK, the one I have here on mine. So that's the first part of what we need to get the game to launch and run here on SteamOS. So once you've got that set, you've got Proton Experimental ready to go. We're going to go back into the game's properties, double check our force compatibility, and then do the launch option. So yep, we're still set here, good to go. We're on the beta bleeding edge. Now go into general and come down here to launch options. You're going to need to put this command line in, the DXVK underscore HDR equals 0, and then you have space, your command % there. And I'll put this in a description as well. So you need these two parts, the Proton Experimental running on that beta bleeding edge, and these launch options put into the general properties as well. Once you have that, the game should work fine for you. Something was causing me an issue where this wasn't working prior to my factory restore, reimage, but now it is launching and working here for me on SteamOS with this. It still has some hiccups, a little audio glitching here and there, and stuff like that. It tends to happen. Not sure if that's part of this or the game's still having issues, but anyway, able to load all the way through to the end here and get to start, or if you haven't logged in yet, you might have to log in, but it'll get you to there and then into the main menu. Okay, so let's go over and take a look at the settings that we're going to start off using here, and there's really not a lot of wiggle room. Pretty much going to be on the low end preset, but there's some things you can go in and turn down that we'll take a look at a little bit later on in the video as well. We're definitely going to be using FSR2 here. I recommend balanced or performance. We'll take a look at both of those. And again, some of these options here, like terrain detail, plants, rocks, grass, some things you can turn off or down a little bit further. And we'll take a look at that here in a little bit too, but I'm just on the low end preset as we first start off the game here and get into a little bit of the performance with this finally running here on the Steam Deck, at least decent enough to check it out anyways. And it's still going to be a bit of a problem here or there, depending on where you're at in this game. You could be anywhere from 15 or 18 FPS dips all the way up into the mid 30s or so, depending, and it's really going to vary. I noticed that most of the spots I tend to jump into are in the mid to upper 20s, just in general in a lot of the areas. Some of the easier to run stuff in the lower to mid 30s, but that's typically where we've been at, and I think that's why a lot of people have said 20 to 30 FPS on the Steam Deck, at least so far, really depending upon where you're at and what you're into and that type of thing. And there's definitely areas that will run much worse or more difficult than others, and speed of the plane is going to have something to do with some of that as well as it's loading stuff in. But anyways, continuing on here, we're going to take a look at some other settings as well. You see here around 24 to 30 FPS in this area, and I did say we could turn down a few more settings. I didn't turn all of them down. I'll show you that here. If you go down into the low end and we select this here, we can turn some stuff off. And I'm going to turn off plants, trees we have to leave on, so we'll have low, turn off rocks, turn off grass. You can also lower the level of terrain detail down to 10. I just didn't happen to do it here. Really didn't notice much difference though when I started checking that out. And that's pretty much what we're going to go with to kind of gain a little bit more before we try performance FSR2. This is very similar in performance though, whether I have this stuff turned down or not. It does help a little here or there depending on where I'm at, but it only does so much. Performance FSR2 will do some because we are still GPU bound and bringing that base render resolution down is going to help. Now, of course, things are going to get a bit more muddy and fuzzy here or there, especially with stuff out in the distance. So not sure if you're going to want to use FSR2 performance, but it does get your FPS a little bit higher. We don't dip to 24 in the same area, and we're up a few more FPS. It's not a lot, but it does help if you want to go that route. So you're able to turn some more settings down, use FSR2 to your advantage, get as much performance out of it as you can, and hopefully we'll get some fixes for the performance. Maybe it'll run a little better later on, and also hopefully we won't need to go through the experimental bleeding edge stuff and have this thing just work out of the gate the way that we want it to. But anyways, guys, thanks a lot for coming and check out the video. As always, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.